Steelers fans, I think I've found the perfect person to be the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's if the team moves on from Mike Tomlin in the foreseeable future. But no matter what the future holds here on Steelers Talk, we will be covering whatever the Pittsburgh Steelers do every single season, every single day, every offseason, every big move. So if you guys don't want to miss any of the big moments in Steelers history over the next several years, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we provide you guys free and insightful content on this channel about what the Steelers are doing. We break down every big news item that comes out. We go live for most of the really big items like coaching firings, for example, or trades or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, we go live for every single Steelers game as well for the largest Steelers watch parties anywhere on the YouTube platform. So if you guys want the most extensive fan experience anywhere on YouTube, make sure you guys click that subscribe button and join the channel for free today. So first things first here, I want to address Mike Tomlin before I reveal who I think is the perfect fit to be the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do want to say that I think the most likely scenario for 2026 is that Mike Tomlin is back. I still have a lot of optimism that this Steelers team will have double-digit wins here in 2025, that they'll make the playoffs. And if that's the case, I really don't see Mike Tomlin leaving the building, getting fired, being traded or anything like that. All right, I do think that the most likely scenario at this point in time is that Coach T remains with the football team in 2026. And I will say this as well. I don't think Tomlin is a bad coach. All right, I know a lot of people in this fan base are very frustrated with the lack of innovation in terms of his defensive schemes and all this different stuff, but I do think he's a very good motivator. I do think that the players, if you just listen to him talk, or listen to the players talk about him, if you listen to other coaches talk about him, the reverence and respect that they have for him and his leadership style, and like these are the alphas of the world here. These are NFL football players and coaches that hold him in that high regard. So I think as a team leader, as somebody that teaches turnover culture, as he likes to call it, I mean, the turnover differential that the Steelers have had during his tenure is number one in the National Football League by a wide margin, and it has continued on throughout even recent seasons. And then also his record in close games over an 18-year stretch is absolutely unprecedented. So the mental toughness that he instills in his teams, the ability to raise the tide, as some people would say, in terms of having things go wrong with your football team, but still being able to be a competitive football team under this head coach, I think is probably the biggest thing that he brings to an organization. He just brings stability to an NFL team, and that's certainly what he has provided here in Pittsburgh. But with that said, I think Tomlin returning in 2026 certainly isn't a certainty at this point. All right, I think that if the Steelers go 6 wins or 7 wins or even 8 wins this year and they really underperform despite all the big players that they brought in this year, there is a possibility that the Pittsburgh Steelers approach him and say, you know what, we're going to be kind of embracing a rebuild this next offseason, and we want to accommodate you, Mike, to send you elsewhere via a trade. And I think that that's the case. If it's clear that this organization is heading towards a reset, they're going to be drafting a new franchise quarterback. They're going to be trading away some of their more expensive veteran assets to try and build a new future here in Pittsburgh. I think that Pittsburgh will want to move on, and frankly, I think Mike Tomlin might want a fresh start in that scenario. I'm not sure if Mike Tomlin wants to go through a full rebuild here in Pittsburgh. He might want to go somewhere else and try to instill his culture somewhere else after nearly 2 decades here in the Steel City. But he might be saying, but Jack, he just signed a massive extension. There's no way the Steelers will fire him and be on the hook for all that money. And I think that that's a pretty decent point. I think that the Steelers, they probably don't want to pay millions of dollars to Mike Tomlin to coach against them in the future, right? So I think what will happen here, guys, is that if Pittsburgh moves on from Mike Tomlin, my guess is that they will trade him, and they will trade him for a high draft pick. And by the way, I think that there will be multiple teams willing to give up at least a day 2 pick, maybe even a day 1 draft pick to get Mike Tomlin as their head coach because of the stability that we have talked about, because of the track record in terms of the win percentage in his career, the one score game win percentage throughout his career, the turnover culture that he brings to the table. I think there's a lot of teams that have really struggled with instability at the head coaching spot for many seasons that would love to get a stable head coach like Mike Tomlin in their building, and they might be willing to give up a high draft pick in return for Mike Tomlin's services. And the Steelers already have a ton of draft capital in 2026. They have a bunch of compensatory picks, but if they can add another first-round pick or second-round pick in exchange for Mike Tomlin, I think that's something that is somewhat realistic. When it comes to a Mike Tomlin trade, you're going to be loading up on picks in the early, middle, and late rounds, and the Steelers are really going to be able to jumpstart that rebuild if they decide to go down that route starting next offseason. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. What is the percent chance that Mike Tomlin is back with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026? Put it on a scale of 0, meaning no chance. This is his final season here in Pittsburgh. He sucks, to 100, meaning he's definitely coming back. No chance he's anywhere else in 2026. That'll be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to let you guys know about a great opportunity, get a great piece of Steelers apparel. While I'm talking about that opportunity, let me know the percent chance Mike Tomlin is back with the Steelers next year. And with that, you guys can use our link, chatsports.com/PitSalute25. That link is down in the comments and description of today's show. If you guys click that link, you guys will be sent to our website where you guys can get the 2025 edition of the Steelers Salute to Service hoodie. All right, obviously this is a kind of limited edition here, so if you guys want to get your hands on this Salute to Service hoodie, I really like the design this year. As always, they've got the American flag patch on the side, and then they've got the little design there on the patch logo there. Really simple, really clean with the army green color. Really like the design of this year's Salute to Service hoodie, guys. So if you want to get the Steelers version of it this year, don't wait. It's just really for this month that it's really available on the website here. So go to chatsports.com/PitSalute25 to get your Salute to Service Steelers hoodie in your closet today. So my pick to replace Mike Tomlin as the next Steelers head coach is Vikings defensive coordinator and former Steelers assistant a coach here, Brian Flores, all right? And we're going to be going up against Flores this week in Dublin and his defense. We're going to get a good look at what his defense looks like, and I thought that this week was the perfect time to do this video because we're going to be talking a lot about Flores on our preview and all that different stuff, and we're going to be talking about him a lot during the watch party. So I wanted to kind of get ahead of that, talk about why, if Mike Tomlin ends up moving on from the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming offseason, that Brian Flores is the guy that I think would be perfect to replace him. So we'll start with my criteria here and why I think he's perfect for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number one, he has instant credibility inside the Steelers locker room. If the Steelers move on from Mike Tomlin, there will be a lot of players that are upset about that. But if they're going to be happy to play for anyone else outside of Mike Tomlin, I think it's going to be somebody like Brian Flores, who has been in the building. He understands the organization. He understands the standard and the expectations of the organization, and players know him and already highly respect him. All right, we've talked about guys like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and all these guys that have been in the same building as Brian Flores and be very complimentary of his coaching style, of his leadership style, of the energy and the positivity that he brings to a locker room. And, you know, I think that if you're looking for somebody that has instant credibility to replace somebody that has the highest win percentage in Steelers history and from a head coach, and this is an organization that has Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher, two Hall of Fame head coaches, you better replace him with somebody that, you know, has instant credibility, can take control of a locker room. And that's the second thing that I love about Flores, is that he's got a big personality. He's got a lot of energy. He's got a ton of charisma. Players love playing for him. If you don't believe me on that, just go on YouTube after this video, look up Brian Flores mic'd up, and then just listen to him talk to players during the game, man. Super positive, super big personality, lots of energy. And, you know, let's face it, guys, you know, Mike Tomlin's one of the best and most captivating leaders in the National Football League. Players that talk about playing for him, coaches that talk about being in his meetings. Everyone's taking notes. Brian Flores even said this week in his press conference in Minnesota that he stole a bunch of stuff from Mike Tomlin in those team meetings. And, you know, I think that the person that replaces Tomlin as the next head coach of the Steelers needs to be able to captivate an audience the same or in a similar way to what Tomlin does, because if you're going with kind of a timid house mouse type of head coach that's more of like a schematic guy on offense but isn't really a leader, you know, I just don't know if that's going to rally the troops the same way, because these players are used to having some really incredible team meetings. So you need somebody with a lot of energy, a lot of charisma. I think Brian Flores brings that to the table. You might be saying, but Jack, he lost the locker room in Miami or whatever. Like there was reports out there that he lost the locker room in Miami, that he lost a lot of respect from the players in that building. It definitely seems like Tua Tagovailoa didn't love playing for him. Obviously, Flores famously wanted Justin Herbert instead of Tua back in that NFL draft. But I think that Flo has certainly gone through a journey of personal growth. And he has talked about this in a number of interviews and a bunch of press conferences where he came from the Belichick defense there, where he worked for Bill Belichick for almost a decade. And if you don't know anything about Bill Belichick, he is a tyrant, all right? And a lot of coaches from that Belichick tree got hired elsewhere, tried to instill that tyrannical type of approach, and they lost the respect of the players in the locker room because, hey, not everybody's Bill Belichick and has as many rings as he has, right? So they don't have the same level of credibility to call players soft to their face the same way that Bill Belichick could in a team meeting, right? So what Flo has done is he has gone to work for players' coaches, very positive types of coaches that players love playing for, Mike Tomlin and Kevin O'Connell. And he has talked a ton about how much he has learned how to be a positive leader and a positive force in the locker room from these two head coaches, and Mike Tomlin and Kevin O'Connell, who are some of the best team leaders in all of football. So I think in a second chance to lead a locker room, I think Flores will be more positive. I think that he will certainly maintain that respect level in the locker room. Then another reason why I think Flores is perfect is that he is a defensive mastermind, and he's one of the premier defensive minds in the league, in my opinion. We're going to be talking about his defense a ton on the Steelers-Vikings preview coming out later this week. But, you know, his ability to disguise, his ability to rotate coverage post-snap, his ability to make quarterbacks worry about the cover zero blitz, and all the creative ways that he designs pressure. He's a better defensive mind than anybody here with the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff. And, you know, that is just a fact. And that includes Mike Tomlin, who I consider to be a pretty darn good defensive mind. And Terrell Austin is not so great. But, you know, Brian Flores is legitimately, like, in my opinion, a top 5 defensive mind in the game today. He runs a truly modern defense. And I think if it was implemented here in Pittsburgh without the supervision of Mike Tomlin, I think that this defense could be really, really special and get back to the standard of defense that we are used to here in Pittsburgh. So I think that would be fantastic to have that defensive culture remain here in Pittsburgh for many seasons on end, as long as Flores is the head coach here in Pittsburgh. And then also on the other side of the ball, I think that he has the ideal offensive coordinator connections. If the Steelers are going to hire a defensive head coach yet again, I think you have to have the right connections to get the right offensive coordinator, especially because in this scenario, there's almost a 100% chance you are drafting your new franchise quarterback, and you got to have the right OC to help develop him. And Coach Flores right now is right in the middle of that Sean McVay hodgepodge tree with Kevin O'Connell, who's called himself the tall Sean McVay there in Minnesota, and he's great friends with Josh McCown. Josh McCown refused to take offensive coordinator, even head coaching interviews this year because I think he's waiting to be the offensive coordinator whenever Brian Flores gets his next head coaching opportunity. So you could poach one of the most brightest offensive coordinator candidates in the entire league if you hire Brian Flores. Now, is it possible McCown gets poached and you're going to have to go out and get another guy and the cycle just keeps continuing? Absolutely. But he certainly has connections inside that coaching tree, which is the exact type of offense that I want to be run here with the Pittsburgh Steelers if the Steelers are going to move off of Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith. Then we get into why I think Coach Flo just checks every box for me, guys, like we just said. From an offensive perspective, from a defensive perspective, I think that would help formulate one of the best coaching staffs in the National Football League with his leadership style, with his defensive mind, and then his connections to the offensive world there with Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell, and in that offensive philosophy, I think that would construct the best possible coaching staff, period, here with the Pittsburgh Steelers if you're going to move on from Mike Tomlin. But you might be saying, but Jack, what about Flores' lawsuit against the National Football League? Isn't that going to prevent any NFL team from hiring him as a head coach? And honestly, guys, I don't think so. Just this past hiring cycle, Brian Flores had not one, but 3 head coaching interviews. Now, obviously, he didn't get the job in any of these 3 cases, but the fact that he is getting interviews and has got interviews over the last several seasons tells me that teams are seriously considering bringing him in. All right, so the Chicago Bears, New York Jets, Jacksonville Jaguars all bring him in. And if there's any team that is going to look past an NFL lawsuit to hire the best possible coach for their football team, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion. All right, like they hired Mike Tomlin at a time where not a lot of black head coaches were being hired. All right, it's called the Rooney Rule for a reason. All right, this is an organization that kind of goes against the grain in hiring practices a lot. And if they think Brian Flores is the best fit for their football team, and I think that he is, if they move on from Mike Tomlin, then I think that they would pull the trigger on that. And by the way, Flores talked glowingly about the Rooney family, this organization, in his press conference earlier this week. So I think if they offered him the job, I don't think he would be saying no. And my take on the whole situation here, guys, when it comes to Coach Flo, when it comes to potentially moving on from Tomlin, is that if we're starting a rebuild, I would rather move on from Mike Tomlin, and I would rather bring in a new, fresh, modern voice. I think that coach and that voice is Coach Flores. And then if you're putting on top of that another high draft pick in next year's NFL draft because you're trading Tomlin to a different NFL team, I think that is the best possible way to kickstart your rebuild here at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, hopefully the Steelers have a great season this year. Hopefully they win 10 to 12 games. They win a playoff game. They go on a run to potentially try and compete for a Super Bowl championship, and Mike Tomlin is back next year. That is obviously what I'm hoping is happening, and I'm still kind of expecting to happen. But with us playing the Vikings this week, I just wanted to kind of break down Coach Flores and why he's my favorite potential Tomlin replacement, if that ends up being the case coming up this offseason. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. What grade would you give a Brian Flores hire as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. Obviously, I love this potential hire. I'm giving it an A+, especially if you're getting a high draft pick in return from Mike Tomlin along with Coach Flores. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. I just want to let you guys know before we say goodbye here that we will be going live later today, not tomorrow. We usually go live on Thursdays, but we're going to go live today at 5 p.m. Eastern time, our normal time, to get into our preview for Steelers versus Vikings. We're going to have some wide receiver targets to target before the trade deadline this year. We're going to be talking about the latest news and rumors, and of course, as always, we'll be taking your questions on the weekly Steelers Talk mailbag. So 5 p.m. Eastern time, it's going to be a loaded Steelers Talk live show. You're not going to want to miss it. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.